Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having an absolutely fantastic day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. I'm pretty sure, almost nearly certain, a lot of you have been paying attention to the markets over the course of the last couple of weeks and or months. A lot of the general consensus that we're getting right now is that things are going to get crazy. This is reliant on a lot of things. One of the main focal points, of course, has to do with accumulation. If you haven't been paying attention, I'm not sure how you've gotten this far. But as I've mentioned in many videos over the course of the last 2 years, a lot of the Bitcoin that is available is no longer available and is being bought up by larger parties and institutions who have been in the space and who are now in the cryptocurrency space as well. I've been chatting with a couple of my friends recently, or even just people who I know who are in the market, and kind of discussing not the playbook, but where we think things are going. It's also, I don't know if it's just time kind of makes us all go in this direction, or if it's like really paying attention to the news. I have 3 friends. Hello, if you're watching, hello. 3 friends who have become Bitcoin maximalists in the last like 4 to 5 months. There was a bit of skepticism at the end of last year as far as where things were going to go. But I think the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs has like really like set them directly on a course in understanding that Bitcoin is the leader of the actual market. I have a friend as well who's also considering nearly relinquishing all of his altcoins just to put it exclusively into Bitcoin. It's not even a joke. Like, this was something, and I mean, I'm going to try not to get too deep into this conversation because it can last for a while. One of the main ideas a number of years ago when I first got into the market was that eventually everyone would, almost like a hive mind, kind of understand that Bitcoin is the answer. Whether it is the answer, question mark. No one knows the future. However, the general idea is, or was, or is that at some point the news would, overflow and everyone would get it. This is why a lot of times when we do have news, I constantly mention there's a reason why there's no, like, the other coins aren't in the news. From time to time, we will hear about Cardano. We may hear about Ethereum. We may hear something about XRP, maybe 1 or 2 other coins, but the rest of it ends up being kind of fluff, if you will. The main focus is and has been for the last 15 years just around Bitcoin. Its movement, its momentum, how many people are in the market, the amount of accumulation. There's a reason why they went for Bitcoin ETFs first, and now like there's still like a twinge of hope for the idea of Ethereum ETFs. The idea being, or the whatever, psychic premonition, I have no idea what to call it, for the future was that eventually everyone would kind of come to realize that Bitcoin is the coin that they should have been focusing on. And I even have a friend in Florida. Hello to you. I doubt he's listening, but hello. He said something to me the other day and I like clutched my pearls because I was like, years ago, this guy was kind of into crypto, not really into crypto. He became like more on the side of Bitcoin, but was collecting a bunch of other coins. I was chatting to him a couple days ago, asking him if he had been paying attention to the market. And he, at the end of the conversation, he said, what was it? He said, we all buy Bitcoin at the price that we deserve. And I was like, what? It came down to years ago, I told him to buy Bitcoin back in 2016, 2017. Not that he didn't pay attention, but he didn't really pay attention while I was flailing my arms in the air. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And now I assume that he's, he understands all these things that I've been talking about all the time. So I had never heard anything like that in my entire life. Like we all buy Bitcoin at the price that we deserve. And this also even goes further into the future where there will be people, the first time that they actually buy Bitcoin will be at like $500,000. And that's the point where they finally like got it and understood. And then they'll think that they're late, and then Bitcoin goes up to 2.2 million. Someone else will finally get into Bitcoin and they'll think that they're late. Bitcoin goes to 38 million. And it's kind of like this thing that, essentially could go on forever. A lot of the price predictions that we've been getting, and I've made sure to bring you a lot of them just to even show you how in line that they all are. Previous ones a number of years ago, they were, literally all over the place. Everyone was kind of just throwing out really random numbers, but now they're making a lot more sense. Of course, this was going to happen, but since we have received the actual Bitcoin ETFs, optimism is sky high. Doesn't even make any sense anymore. Like it is completely on another planet, simply because of the levels of accumulation that we have never ourselves experienced before. I said this about 4 or 5 videos ago. It's one thing to have had companies who were talking about buying 50 Bitcoin, 300 Bitcoin, what have you, so on and so forth. But to see that 2 companies are near 400,000 Bitcoin, and then when you cluster them all together, it's even higher than that. And then the other companies who are buying, and I've always believed myself, it doesn't even have to be a belief. It's just more of this is what happens, is that rich people talk. So nearly all the time within the cryptocurrency space or even financial markets, we will hear this company's doing this, that company's doing that. And it kind of takes the focus off of everyone else in the industry who might be and or is doing the exact same thing. So when we hear that BlackRock and Fidelity are buying up Bitcoin, or the ETF is getting fuller and all this other money, the inflows and all these other things, we kind of tend to focus on just those 2 companies. But what actually happens is that you have a bunch of other rich people around the world. They might be in Monaco, they might be in Milan, they might be in Tokyo, they might be in South Africa. They see this news and they go, okay, we got to do something as well. And they have their own funds, they have their other hedge funds. The issue is that these companies will, and I air quote here, only maybe purchase around $10 to $15 million worth of Bitcoin. And I say only because it does not compare to the other news of the $400 million, $600 and $800 million worth of inflows. So we get the more significant news, air quotes, if you will. But the other stuff just doesn't really make it into the news, because if you had tons of articles that said 10 to 15 million, it would never be as attractive visually or hearily as hearing the number $400 million. So, right. In today's most popular news, this one was into the sky. Cathie Wood is back with one of her marvelous predictions. She became a relative Bitcoin bull over the course of the last couple of years. I can't really put a time frame on it. It's more of she kind of appeared out of nowhere. She became really popular for being mega bullish on Coinbase and all these other things. And she talks quite highly about Bitcoin, as does Michael Saylor. They're kind of the same person, just not, if that makes any sense as far as their idea of where Bitcoin is going to go. But she made news because, like many other companies, their valuations of Bitcoin have changed. So remember at the beginning of the year, we were hearing that Bitcoin was probably going to maximum hit $55,000 by December. And now a lot of companies have readjusted that number based off of logic to around $150,000 to $200,000 by the end of this year. Cathie has done the exact same thing for her overall current valuation of Bitcoin, and that's what heavily made it into the news. It talks about Bitcoin's price, yada yada, mainstream assets, so and so and so. While speaking at the Bitcoin Investor Day conference, held in New York on the 22nd of March, Cathie Wood updated her and her firm's previous lofty forecast for Bitcoin following the SEC's decision to approve 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs. She said, and I quote, "Last year, we put our bull case for Bitcoin. It was $1.5 million. With this institutional green light that the SEC has provided, kicking and screaming through it, the analysis we've done is that if institutional investors were to allocate a little more than 5% of their portfolios to Bitcoin, as we think they will over time, that alone will add $2.3 million to the projection that I just gave you. This is now a $3.8 million Bitcoin price target by the year 2030 and reflects an upside or a return of 5,855% from the price when she gave that information, and Bitcoin was roughly around $63,000. A lot of you might remember the weird drop that we had in price not too long ago. If you're not looking at the screen, it says this implies a $75 trillion valuation in 6 years. This also roughly computes with many of the other numbers that we've also been seeing as well. I think even Plan B was recently in the news, and his numbers were between a $1 to a $3 million Bitcoin by 2029 and or 2030. Without having to rant, it is impossible to stress how rare Bitcoin actually is and how much more rare it is going to become after the next 3 halvings. I mentioned before, I should have actually had a chart here. I don't have any charts. I wasn't even thinking about it actually, where it shows the actual issuance rate of Bitcoin. 2024, 2028, and 2032, the halvings will make the amount of Bitcoin created per block. It comes out to around, I believe, 700,000 Satoshis. That's nothing. That's what you're currently able to get for, what is it, like $500, $600 or something along those lines. And that's going to be the only Bitcoin that ends up coming out as transactions are validated, leading a lot of people to believe that this is going to... So if we're seeing, long story short, if we're seeing the current accumulation by just BlackRock alone, for those of you who missed that video, BlackRock in their ETF is currently accumulating 13 times as much Bitcoin that is currently being mined. So imagine like 1 Bitcoin comes out, they're buying 13 Bitcoin for every 1 Bitcoin that gets released. Per day, they're accumulating 13 times more. And when we have the halving in just a few weeks, that number will mathematically double to 26 times as much Bitcoin as is being created just by BlackRock. That's not BlackRock and Fidelity. That's not BlackRock and MicroStrategy. It is just one company. This is what I was saying before, and I think the numbers end up being a bit staggering for a lot of people, because I think we've lived in a world for so long where we didn't have this kind of momentum, we didn't have this kind of news, and it's always been like, well, Bitcoin could go here if, not Bitcoin is going to go here based on the math, because we see 2 companies will have 1 million Bitcoin by the end of summer. That kind of thing. So when you factor in the idea, I mean, realistically, as I went over in another video, I don't have the exact numbers, but let's be completely honest. If in 3 weeks, BlackRock is going to be accumulating 26 times the amount of Bitcoin that's being mined, and we factor in the other companies that we know are buying, it's probably anywhere between 75 to 100%, or rather 100x. The amount of Bitcoin that's being created per day is just being bought up by these companies. Because we know that there are other ETFs around the world as well who are also buying millions per day. It doesn't make it into our news because it's not 800 million, but there's dozens of them who are also buying. There are tons of rich people who see the halving that's coming up and they're also buying. There, for those of you who are not on Twitter or crypto Twitter, as it were, there are a number of addresses who are constantly popping up and they're buying several hundred Bitcoin daily. It's not like one buy. It's like, no, there's a continual buy every single day at the exact same time for 100 Bitcoin or 150 or 300 Bitcoin. There's some who are buying 900 Bitcoin per day. It's literally global. So you may hear in the news just Fidelity, just BlackRock, which only then ties to what's happening in the USA. And it's like, no, buddy boy, this is happening everywhere. So if they're on 26x, right, as we get to the next halving, the idea is that by 2028, basically madness will ensue across the planet. People will get it. You won't have a choice but to get it. I was chatting with even before this video, we were texting. I have a group chat with my best friends. Hello, if they're watching. And it's so, this is why we're friends. Like hey, good morning, what's up? So money, like we kind of like directly get into it. And we were talking about the idea, once again, of where Bitcoin is going, how the market is doing this morning, et cetera, et cetera. And, oh gosh, I completely lost my train of thought. Oh gosh, what was it? Oh no, I lost it. Crap. Yes. Got it. We were talking about Bitcoin's price rising enough to actually outpace the value of real estate. So we're also like a real estate friends group. And one of my friends was like, imagine if Bitcoin like keeps going up and then, so-and-so happens. And I was like, imagine when Bitcoin is more expensive than oh gosh, why am I losing all my words today? Than a rental property. That's gonna be the point that I think actually hits a lot of people really hard. So if you're able to get a rental property, let's say, depends on where you live. They fluctuate all over. Imagine you find out that Bitcoin goes to 200, 250,000, roughly around the same price for a studio, 1-bedroom, depends on where you live. And you end up making higher returns from that Bitcoin than you do the actual property, where you have to find someone to live inside of it, hope that they don't destroy something, hope that they pay rent and all these other kinds of things. It's a very interesting thing to think about. Anyway. I could literally go on forever with these conversations because it's kind of all that I think about all the time, especially when I'm chatting with my friends. But we're probably going to enter a world where this does happen. What's his name? Michael Saylor. A couple days ago, he was he's always at these events, and he said Bitcoin is either going to 0 or it's going to 1 million. Either collectively, every single human on the planet will stop using Bitcoin, which is it's so unlikely it's ridiculous, or Bitcoin's halvings continue. People keep buying fragments of Bitcoin or buying whole Bitcoins like him and his company. And then Bitcoin's price eventually hits $1 million. And I was like, the implications of $1 million is such a heavy psychological thing for people. I remember, you must remember as a kid, I remember hearing that people were millionaires. It made no sense to me as a child. But then you get older and you're like, I want to get to $1 million. Why? Why not 928,415? Why not 512? It's such a round number, and it signifies such a dramatic level of wealth compared to hundreds of millions and billions of people on the planet. Imagine. I'm not even talking about her $3.8 million per Bitcoin by 2030 is insane. Do you understand? If someone handed you $3.8 million right now, what would you do? What could you do with it? It is such an enormous amount of money. You would literally, and I mean basic level of investing, you would never, ever, ever, ever have to work again. Ever. Now imagine that ends up being the price for one Bitcoin. Imagine Bitcoin goes up to $1 million. Once again, not even going for her 3.8 million by 2030. Let's just say a $1 million Bitcoin. You know what that would do psychologically to so many people who refused to buy any Bitcoin? They could never ever hold as much Bitcoin as you. Do you understand that? I watch and first of all, I watch documentaries all the time. And two, I'm pretty sure the algorithm is like, okay, this is what he wants to watch. So I get tons of financial documentaries, and I get a lot of things from like CNBC as well. They're like these like 10, 15-minute videos where they chat with, I mean, sometimes people around the world, but usually as CNBC is in the States, they chat with people within New York, within Miami, within California, et cetera, and they ask them like, like financial questions, and they see how much money people have, what levels of stress they have, and money wise, etc., and how much money these people have put away for their retirement. And I think it's something like 78% of Americans have like nothing put away for retirement. I've seen them talking to all these people, and they ask them why, and they say, well, my rent is this, my car fare is this, my insurance is this, my this is this, and childcare, this, that, food, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the month, I have $150. I try and put it away, but there's always some kind of unexpected expense. Bam, I'm $45,000 in debt because I can't do anything else. It's always the exact same story over and 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 over. And then I sit there and I think sometimes, at least for my life, the way that I've seen it in front of me, is I've known so many people, and I've seen so many times that I know a lot of people who buy like frivolous things. I get it, cool, amazing. Like we all want weird, shiny, new plastic things sometimes. Oh, wow, this is amazing. I've never had this before. But then it kind of gets to this point where I'm like, how are you not setting anything aside for retirement? And I mean like in like the smallest like fractions of it, not even counting in the idea of like someone having 150 at the end of the month. And also many times they show like the price charts on the screen of what these people are putting their money into, and they have every single TV subscription. They're buying a new 2024, 2025 car that's on lease. It's all these really weird things trying to like show off to other people. And then I sit there sometimes, and listen, I sit there sometimes and I think, imagine if, riddle me freaking this. Imagine Bitcoin does go up to $3.8 million. A tenth of a Bitcoin right now, at the time of me making this video, is roughly around $7,000. And you sit there and you go, that's kind of expensive. But then you've been in this market for 2, 3, 4, 5, how many years? Imagine you had accumulated fragments every single month, fragment and fragment and fragment and fragment. You would be at a tenth of a Bitcoin. In a couple of years, you have $380,000 worth of Bitcoin sitting on your computer or sitting on a cryptocurrency exchange. You know what you can do with that money? You know how far that money goes? From like this little thing that you put aside because you chose not to buy a new pair of shoes when you didn't. It's all these things always click into my head. Because I've seen it many times, once again, at least in my life and my situations that I've been in as I've been on this planet, where I get into contact with people who I haven't heard from. Like I like messaging people. I don't understand how we live in the future and more people aren't messaging each other. I always try to message my old friends. I text, video message, hey, what's up? What's going on? I haven't seen you in a while. And I'll chat with a lot of people, even people who like I know now, who I see all the time. And there's always this same common theme. It's like, I don't got it. I'm broke. I don't have any money. And I'm like, but like you said those same exact things 15 years ago. Like what do you refuse to change? Like, why aren't you, you understand what I mean? Like it drives me absolutely up the wall. And then you have these valuations for people talking about Bitcoin. Like I understand, cool, got it. Bitcoin's at $800 and you're like, seems a bit of like a little bit crazy for me to get into it. The idea of you having, if you had put in $80 into Bitcoin and a decade later becomes $380,000 is absolutely mind-blowing to me. I don't get how more people aren't more fearful for their future financially. Like, why aren't you putting away scraps? Why aren't you, like, it did, like, to do nothing seems nuts to me. I can't find another word for it. A lot of the valuations that we have for Bitcoin right now are intense. But I think what's going to really, and it's not even light a fire under people, because that's not what ends up happening to people. My idea would be that somebody would see Bitcoin going over $1 million and it would kind of, they would go, now's the point. I need to get into this market. But it only like discourages a lot of people. People see it and they go, well, I'm definitely too late. How many friends do you have who are messaging you right now talking about Bitcoin and you're telling them to put some money into the market and they're like, I don't know, man. What if it goes back down? It's constant loop. It's this loop over and over and over. But when we hit six figures, these people are going to be so angry with themselves that it won't motivate them to put money into the market. It'll actually tell them mentally to not put money into the market at all. It goes up to $500,000 and they'll have this, 2020 and go, oh my gosh, imagine if I had put it in at 100K, and then it's like, do it now. It's at $500,000. And then when it goes to $1 million, they go, oh my gosh, I remember seeing it at 500K. What happened? And it's like, people keep making sure that they miss these opportunities and these chances. I mean, all the time in life. It's freaking nuts. I was chatting with one of my friends, and he literally said, this is why you're the modern investor. He said, because you understand that like you need high levels of risk in different markets to be able to make like the really big returns. He said a lot of people aren't like that. And I was trying to like focus on what he was saying. He was like, most people don't understand investing, don't want to invest, or if they do invest, it's like through their 401k, it's like through their retirement plan. And they're like, okay, cool. At least I have something. Like there's nothing further. But like, I watch so many documentaries, I watch so many shows, and I see like how bad things are. If you ever get a chance, I do this in multiple languages. I find it very fun, and I don't know why. I watch a lot of old news. If you speak the languages, from France, from like the 1960s and 70s. I watch a lot of like old German news programs as well. Like people have uploaded them onto YouTube, and you can like see in the 70s, these people were like, yeah, economically things aren't really good. And then you watch stuff from the 80s, and they're like, yeah, things are getting worse. You watch it from the 90s, it's even worser. Not a word, but like, and then I remember 2008, 2009, and seeing everyone in like this crazy panic, and things have not gotten any better for them. And we see this new system taking over the world. You see it actively in front of you every single day. I make a video on both channels every single day. And to still be confused and to still not understand it, to still be skeptical is nuts. It's probably the actual definition of insanity right now. What is it? Doing the same things over and over and expecting the same results? It does not make any sense. I said that before sometime last year. I was like, it's impossible for you to watch this channel and to not even have 1 million Satoshis. Bitcoin was like at, what was it? $28,000, $30,000. When I said that, I was like, how do you watch this channel and you don't even have 1 million Satoshis? It doesn't make any sense. You know what the news is. You see it every single day. It's clear as freaking day. And to continuously get the news, and you know that the halving's coming up. You know what's about to happen. If you've been here since last cycle, you know exactly what's about to happen. And to sit there and go, I don't really want to own like fragments of Bitcoin is insane. Absolutely nuts. I'm very excited for the future, if you couldn't tell. Because just about everything that I've heard before has come true. I remember mentioning in if you want to find it, good luck. I remember mentioning in 2017, like a lot of these things that people were talking about would happen in the Bitcoin market in 2024. The idea of countries and institutions and banks being in this space was like, guys, I can't wait for the next 7 years. And now we're here. Everything has come true. And then to hear that we're gonna, even just based off of the ETFs and the halving, just based off of those. Remember at the beginning of this year, one of the other people who told us, constantly has been correct, who mentioned the other countries who got into Bitcoin years and years ago. He said that we're going to be hearing from 3 different countries this year who are also like they will announce like we're also actively buying Bitcoin. And the one that he mentioned, I believe, was the Saudi Royal Fund. I believe that's what it was. And I'm like, what more convincing do you need? And I say that not only here, but also like to the world. They can't hear me because they're not watching the video. But gosh darn it, if Bitcoin goes to 100,000, there's still going to be people who are like, it's still nothing. Bitcoin's going to go to $280,000. Whatever. I don't really. Bitcoin's slow. Oh my gosh, the guy, what's this guy's name? Peter Schiff. Are you not embarrassed? Do you know how I would have moved into the mountains? I would have become a monk. He started telling people when Bitcoin was like, I think $300 or $400 to not buy Bitcoin and buy gold. You know how that's embarrassing. Like, you sound insane. When Bitcoin goes to 100K, he's going to go off on Twitter. He's going to completely lose his mind and talk about, well, it's going to fall back down. When Bitcoin goes to $1 million, like, I'm going to slightly feel sad for him. Like, fragmented slightly. That this man wasted, 15, 20 years of his life talking negatively about something that he could have bought fragments of. Crazy, 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 crazy world that we're currently in. But I mean, that's the market that we chose, so we'll see exactly how it goes. Very popular news. Anytime Cathie Wood says something, everyone is kind of completely all over it. But I think the recalculations that we've been seeing, we also got one from, I think it was the bank Standard Chartered. They were expecting a max price this bull run of, I think it was 120,000 Bitcoin, and now they're saying 150,000 this year and 250,000 plus next year. So everyone's been recalculating, because like I always say, if this is the information that we get, like the public, if me and you are getting news and information that these companies are buying up this much through the ETFs, I can't imagine. You know, like, have you ever seen, you must have, on YouTube, there are all these like conventions, like just basically for like wealthy people, where like they literally just kind of like meet up and hang out. It is it's a thing that they do. I watched one recently discussing real estate. It's not funny, but I find it quite funny, because it was a video from 4 years ago, and these people were in Switzerland, and they were they were talking about real estate trends and where they were going to move the market. And they were discussing, I think, certain American cities, certain Canadian cities, certain European cities. And they were like, yeah, like, we're expecting like prices to like go up by 28% over the course of the next like year or two, like, per property. And they were like, the person was like, how do you expect it? They were like, well, my fund and his fund and his fund and her fund, we're all going to be putting in like around like $400 million each into these different spaces to like, buy up as much property as possible. And the guy was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, they have discussions about all these things. There are tons of family funds. There's a video on YouTube from years ago. I think, what is it called? It's not called Growing Up Rich. It's some kind of a documentary. Oh gosh, what is it? It's basically about like rich kids who live in America, and like the way that their families talk and stuff like that. I think it's with the grandson from Johnson & Johnson. It's like maybe 10, 15, 20 years old, this documentary now. And he talks about like family wealth funds. And basically, like, sometimes they'll only, like, it's like a very exclusive, like they'll only allow you into these kind of clubs if you can verify that your net worth is like over $5 to $10 million. And then they'll help you allocate it places. Like, they will literally like use your money to make sure that you're only like getting returns like consistently, like for the rest of your life and the life of your kids and their kids and their kids. It's very insane. They were, I mean, if you get a chance to find it, please watch it. It looks old and grainy, but like the information you'll get from it is going to be like fantastic. They were, I remember, if I remember correctly, one of the things that the guy was talking about, he's like, our job is to basically like help these people make money forever. So if you have $50 million, they'll help you allocate it into 25 different places to continuously make you money. And one of the questions was like, well, what happens when this guy, the asset manager is no longer working? He's like, well, then my son will take over and someone else will take over. And like, it's basically like a symbiotic friendship that will just continue on forever. He's like, we already have enough allocated so that their great grandkids will never have to work. And then by the time, we get to that generation, we'll have someone else working with the family to make sure that their great grandkids never have to work. And it's like, what? What in the world are you talking about? This is why I always say long term. There's a reason why these companies are buying up all this Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with like a 2-year allocation. They're planning, if Bitcoin is going to $3.8 million in 5.5 years, where is Bitcoin's price in 2040? Where is Bitcoin's price by the time you have grandkids or great grandkids? Where's Bitcoin's price in 2070? That's what I'm always talking about. It's this really weird, let me just focus on today. I want something new, bright and shiny. I want a new car. I want to show off to my neighbors. If you get a chance, last point, there's oh gosh, this was incredible. And I'm so happy that someone uploaded this. This was on Instagram, but I'm sure you can find it. There's a TV show that used to exist, ? It was called $1 Million Listing New York. It had Ryan Serhant and Eric something from Sweden and the other guy. And there's an episode, you can definitely find it, $1 Million Listing, where Ryan got an offer for an apartment and he had to pass it on to the client. I think the apartment was $13 or $14 million. Someone wanted to buy the apartment, but he came forward and said, hey, I want the, here we go. He said, I want the apartment, but I can only offer Bitcoin. And Ryan was like, I don't know. No one really wants Bitcoin. Do you know how much Bitcoin this guy was offering for this apartment? It was 50,000 Bitcoin. I just heard you gasp. It was 50,000 Bitcoin for this $14 million apartment. Someone wrote on Instagram, the person who uploaded it, they said it's now worth billions of dollars. That's now worth billions of dollars. That person could have, and the craziest part is that the person said no to the offer because it was below asking. It was below asking, and they thought that they were being ripped off. So they said, no, I don't want your Bitcoin. I want cash money. $50,000. That person they would have sold a $14 million home for I think like $13.3 million in Bitcoin or something like that. And they would be billionaires. How fantastic is that? I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting, and I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See